So good morning, everyone in Medical Alley and around the world. Thank you so much for joining us today for this conversation on security and compliance in the US healthcare sector. Our expert, Kate Siegrist, partner at EisnerAmper, will be our presenter today. My name is Kyle Jordan. I am the global principal here for Medical Alley. And again, thank you for joining. Before I introduce Kate, I'd like to take a moment to thank the partners who have sponsored this series of webinars on common questions to US market entry. The government of Quebec and Investissement Quebec have partnered with us to present this content. And you're welcome to check out our brand new website for previous sessions that are on demand, covering topics like sales and marketing strategy, regulatory compliance, reimbursement, etc. This morning, Guillaume Muesli, who leads the foreign direct investment team in Quebec's Chicago office, is here to say a few words about this organization and how the government of Quebec can help you and your company succeed in your international efforts. Guillaume, thank you.
So hi everyone, and thank you, Kyle, for giving me the opportunity to say a few words this morning. So like I said, my name is Guillaume. I work for Invest Quebec, and I know that there's a lot of Quebec company participating with this webinar today, but my message to this morning will be more addressed to the American or American companies that are here with us this morning, so that maybe doesn't know us really well. So I work for Investissement Quebec, which is the main economic development agency for the province of Quebec. We are a pretty broad organization with about like 1,200 employees spread out throughout all Quebec regions, but also internationally. We have offices all around the world. I'm based, like I said, in Chicago, and I'm a director for foreign direct investment. The mission of Investissement Quebec is to actually support any companies that has operation in Quebec in their growth locally, but also internationally. So we help them grow in Quebec, but also they have export support. But my role basically is to assist any company from the Midwest region of the United States that would like to expand in Canada and Quebec and set up operation in Quebec. We can do that with various ways. We can provide some business intelligence on site prospecting. We also have a business network. We have really work with a lot of broad business networks that we can put you in contact with. But what also set us apart is that from other EDOs is that we also are the financial arm of the government. So we manage financial incentive, tax credit program. We also sometimes invest equity in some companies in the project. So when we have a VC arm, so we are very active into helping companies accelerate their growth in Quebec or outside, of course. I'm sector agnostic, but of course we have priority sectors, and life science is one of our priority sectors. There's a few main reasons of that, but basically the ecosystem in Quebec is really rich in life science. It's heavily focused on R&D, mainly because we have a really rich ecosystem in university and research center. It's about, like, I would say 300 plus more research center dedicated to life science in Quebec. And also in AI and technology linked to life science. For your information, for example, we have the biggest machine learning academic center in the world in Montreal called MILA, with over 900 researchers based in AI that do project a lot in the healthcare and the medical device. So that's an opportunity that could be interesting for you. But other than the talent and the research center and the universities, the government do a lot of financial support. We have a generous tax credit program, for example, for R&D. So if you're looking to do R&D project in Quebec, you're looking for that 29%-ish tax credit for the eligible expense. That some of that could be fully refundable. So that's pretty aggressive, and we're really happy to help you in that regards. And as well, toward the operation costs, we are 12% cheaper or more competitive, if I may say, than other major cities or in the US and Canada. So if you have any questions, or if you'd like to continue the discussion with me for specifically your company, I would be more than happy to jump on a call with you. I encourage you to reach out to me directly. I don't know, Kyle, if you're able to share my email at one point, but I would be more than happy to help you and have a more extensive discussion with you. And without further ado, I would like to turn it back to Kyle. And I wish you all a great webinar, and I really hope it's going to enable you to accelerate your growth into the US market. Thank you very much.
Merci, Guillaume. The government of Quebec has recruited a strong partner for this year's program in Johnson & Johnson. Just a few months ago, we did a fantastic webinar with J&J on their approach to partnering with startups as a corporate entity, again, on demand if you'd like to learn more. And here today, I'd like to introduce Ashley Mancuso. She is J&J's Senior Director of Product Security. She's going to say a few words about why they're supporting innovation and security as top priorities, and thankful that she's here to support this organization.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kyle, for the opportunity. Really appreciate the time here this morning. So as you mentioned in my introduction, I am accountable for MedTech cybersecurity within the J&J organization. And I think a couple of key points that I would like to highlight here today is really why the subject of cybersecurity is of the utmost importance now, right? And a couple of key takeaways. One, understand when a company, a medical device manufacturer, is looking to enter the US healthcare market, why it's very important to understand in advance and plan for cybersecurity requirements. By design is the word that, or the phrase I should say, that we like to use, and it's absolutely by far the most optimal approach. The second takeaway that I think is important is to also understand which key industry frameworks, terminologies, and timelines you should factor into your business planning and development processes. And then the third takeaway is really a three-step path to compliance and how to get there as a business while minimizing costs or delay. And at the end of the day, we're talking about MedTech products that are really important as an industry to better improve patients. So first, when building a MedTech product or even digital solution for global markets, understanding and including the United States compliance with internationally kind of generally recognized standards is key, right? And really for two reasons. If you think about it, not even the most large, successful organizations with the biggest budgets can realistically build a platform solution tailored to each country or jurisdiction around the world. It's extremely costly and does not enable scale. So when you align to at the early onset industry standards, the ability to scale and support the business becomes much more attainable. So this is a very important concept. And also, if you think about technology and the rapid pace of which it evolves, being able to adapt very quickly really will help mitigate any risk or cyber vulnerabilities that could exist. I think the second message that's important is the subject of harmonization, right? So we're talking about aligning to industry known recognized standards as number one. And then when you think about why that's important and the harmonization that needs to occur globally around the increased regulatory requirements that we're seeing nearly in every country and region, and even here in the United States, we have some state-specific legislation around data privacy that's becoming increasingly more complex to manage. So there are quite a number of efforts. I'll speak about one collaboration between Health Canada and the US Food and Drug Administration have been working very collaboratively through the International Medical Device Regulators Forum, or IMDRF, to attempt to harmonize global regulatory standards, including cybersecurity. This is really important for us as an industry. And I think if you think about kind of beyond regulated devices, stakeholders are creating internationally acceptable standards to unify our frameworks. So things such as ISO 27001, AAMI, SOC, NIST, UL, the list really goes on. There are quite a number of recognized industry frameworks in which to align to. And then the last information that I'll leave you with is internally within J&J MedTech, we are operating and implementing solutions with some of the most stringent and advanced security standards. Why? Right? And really the answer is quite simple. We have an extremely important mission at J&J MedTech, and we believe that cybersecurity is actually enabling our MedTech promise. And our MedTech promise is to save lives and ignite all that's possible in everybody. A very, very powerful promise. And if you think about our increasingly digital world where reimagining health, working to expand access, improve outcomes, obviously reducing health system costs is at the top of the list, and really driving value, this is very, very important. So I spoke about the global regulatory landscape and the need to harmonize. I think the other aspect that's also very important to understand is our customers' expectations, right? So you can seek regulatory approval, but the next step to get devices into the ability to impact patients is you must have customers obviously adopting and purchasing your MedTech products. And if you think about where we're going as an industry, far more connectivity, increased reliance on access to PII and PHI, the hospital system is the one taking on this increased risk. So their expectations of device manufacturers to meet their very stringent requirements, it actually makes sense. It's their patient on the table. It's their hospital network that we're attempting to connect something to, right? So the expectation to ensure cybersecurity of our MedTech products and protection of patient data is very high. So this is why we're very pleased to sponsor this webinar today with Investment Quebec and Medical Alley, and really hope that the introduction around the importance of cyber and privacy compliance frameworks was clear. And again, thank you for the opportunity, and I'll pass it back to you, Kyle.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ashley. We're really grateful to have partners like Quebec and J&J supporting healthcare innovation here in Medical Alley and around the world. Just a couple quick housekeeping notes before we get started. Throughout the presentation, we encourage you to use the Q&A function to ask questions. Kate will answer them at the end of the presentation. We will also be recording this webinar and we'll share it with all of you via email after the session. Guillaume, we can include your email address in there as well to share with folks. Now, I'd like to turn to today's speaker, Kate Siegrist, partner at EisnerAmper. She has over 20 years of combined experience advising CEOs, CISOs, and CIOs. She helps her clients navigate highly regulated industries to ensure business opportunities are not missed due to compliance burden. Kate leads a growing team that consults with executive leadership and business owners to improve their security posture through a variety of audits and assessments, including SOC 1, 2, 3, HITRUST, HIPAA security, privacy, NIST, ISO 27001, and cybersecurity services. She's also been named a notable woman in technology by Twin Cities Business, so I can't think of a better expert to speak to you today. Kate, thank you for being here. The floor is yours.
Perfect. I just want to check with you guys to make sure that you are currently seeing my slide deck. Awesome.
Sure do.
Thank you. Kyle, thank you for the introduction. I've really enjoyed working with you really over the last year or so. Had some really fun opportunities through Medical Alley to get in front of a number of startups in the Medical Alley community, and had an opportunity to meet many of the startups that participate in the Quebec program in a couple of months ago. And so I'm excited to be able to give this presentation. So just a little bit about myself. As Kyle explained, I've been really doing this for about 20 years now. I work with companies all the way from startups to very, very large global billion-dollar organizations. I work in many industries, but certainly healthcare and health tech is kind of my area of focus, and really where I get the most kind of excitement and enjoyment in my job. And one of my passions is working with startups. I really, really feel excited about the opportunity to help startups find those opportunities at organizations like Johnson & Johnson. Ashley, I cannot thank you enough for that, that introduction. I mean, you sold my whole presentation for me today, so I really appreciate it. And what you shared is exactly what I hope that you can get out of my discussion today, which is really focusing on how do we help enable medtech, health tech startups to remove the barriers that they might have to engaging with large corporates. And there are a few barriers, right? But one of the large barriers is really security and privacy compliance. And so I'm going to talk about that today with this group. So I'm a partner at EisnerAmper. I lead the firm's really security assurance practice, which means leading our teams on SOC work, HIPAA, HITRUST, also do a lot of work with other standards mentioned earlier, ISO, NIST. So that is my role, lead a team of about 50 people within the US and work with a lot of global clients as well. We're going to really talk about three things today. Why should we all care about this? I think if anybody that's on this presentation today likely knows why this is important, but I think it's important to maybe know some of the specific details around it. Then we're gonna dig into maybe a little bit more of the boring yet important part, which is what are the U.S. healthcare frameworks that are most often asked for by large corporations within the United States. When I say large corporations, I'm talking about hospital systems, payers, providers, really those organizations where you're going to be able to bring your products to market. And then really the third is going to be, what is the quickest way to achieve compliance? So why compliance? Again, Ashley couldn't have shared it any better. It's really, really important that to really the payers and the providers, that the data that they're sharing with their vendors, their third parties, their service providers, their software providers is secure. We see these things in the headlines all day, every day. Every organization, it's interesting. It used to be kind of primarily financial services and healthcare that had the biggest focus on security and protection of data. Now we are seeing it across the board, whether manufacturing and distribution, marketing, all industries now really care about this, which means that these highly regulated industries have even kind of taken it a step further in terms of the expectations. There's opportunity out there. I just attended the Medical Alley, a Medical Alley event last week, and had the opportunity to speak with an individual at a large health system that's based here in the United States. And we had a really interesting conversation around the challenges of staffing and how healthcare organizations today are trying to solve the challenge of there not being enough people out there to take the jobs that are open, whether it's administrative level opportunities or it's nursing or doctors or whatever that might be. And where the conversation led, not surprisingly, is how can you use technology, digitalization, and the new opportunities that are out there to maybe potentially replace or reduce some of those open positions that just can't get filled. And so there's such a great opportunity out there right now, but those organizations still aren't going to stop caring about security and privacy because of their regulators. I also like to share that it's really important when startups are thinking about why this is important is thinking about your competitors. If you can achieve compliance and get ahead of your competitors and set yourself apart from your competition, achieving this compliance can actually be a sales tool. It can be a way for you to quickly and easily have that initial conversation. If you can say, we have SOC 2, we are HITRUST certified, we have ISO 27001, whatever that might be. So there's a lot of important reasons why we're going to talk about this today. So I want to start by talking about some case studies. Let's talk about where this has helped. So the first one I'm going to talk about is a client of mine called Health Beacon. They're based in Dublin, Ireland, and they create an injectable medication compliance device. So think a smart sharps container. And the challenge that they had is really they have tons of growth and opportunity in the United States, but they wanted to enable their services and provide more data to their customers, but needed to have an automated data feed of the injectable prescriptions that patients have. And so right now, what was happening is they had to have basically a call center where they would take calls from nurses who would call in the prescriptions so those could be programmed into the device. Clearly, having some sort of an automated feed would allow for more ease of doctors and nurses, and also for Health Beacon to provide their product. What they needed to do in order to grow that product into the United States was to have compliance. So they went the route of a SOC 2 plus HITRUST, which we will get into the standards here in a bit, but that was the route that made the most sense for them to start with. And so they've now achieved this compliance, and they are now starting to work in these automated data feeds and be gaining more customers in the marketplace. The next one we're going to talk about is actually based here in the United States. The company is called Kinsa, and they have a connected thermometer. So gone are the days of just having a thermometer that you put in your child's mouth, you wait for it to beep, and then you take it out and look at it. Now, with the digital age, you can have connectivity and connect it to a device. Well, there was an opportunity for them to take that technology, which started as having a fun little app on a mom's phone to sort of show like something cute a child could look at while they had a thermometer in their mouth to count it down for them, and also sort of record your child's temperature. It allowed during COVID for different organizations or maybe even government entities to track, to ensure that people were taking their temperature in the mornings, maybe before they go to school, before they go to work, wherever they might be showing up. And so clearly a lot of sensitive data there. So they needed compliance in order to be able to build those relationships and really take advantage of this big opportunity that they had to shift the focus of their initial product, which was just more was initially focused more towards kind of the experience of the user, to now we have an opportunity to actually sell these thermometers, market them to large organizations or large entities, to really help push through compliance during the height of COVID with taking our temperatures and making sure we're not ill before we go places. So they are taking a phased approach, which is they started with SOC 2, made sure they had the HIPAA compliance, and now they're actually working towards HITRUST compliance. And so we'll talk about that in a bit. But one thing that's important for startups or rapid growth companies is you can't always go for the gold standard to start. There are stepping stones that you can take to get there. And I would say Kinsa is a really great example of saying, we know where we want to get to. We're going to grow our compliance as we grow our business. And those options are out there. So now let's talk a little bit about the standards. I have to go into my auditor mode a little bit here and explain some of these to you. So we're focused on bringing your products from international to the United States. And so we're focusing on the three main standards that are most sought out within the US, which is HIPAA, SOC 2, and HITRUST. But it is important, that most of the companies that I work with that are coming into the US have already had to deal with GDPR legislation or other international privacy legislation, and or already had to be ISO 27001 certified. And so it's important to note that here, many of the companies that I work with have compliance across several of these. The nice thing is that they build upon one another. And a lot of times what we will do is sort of give guidance to our clients on where should you start. So if a company has done none of these yet, so you haven't had to go through any of this yet, we have a conversation around what makes the most sense to where do you start, and how do we make sure that wherever you start and wherever you need to get to, we can build so that we're not redoing, going back and reworking. So with HIPAA, as I think we've all heard this term before, but it's worth talking about the difference between what HIPAA, SOC 2, and HITRUST are. So HIPAA is a law. It's a regulation in the United States that focuses on the protection of health data. Now, that law has been interpreted into a framework. We heard the term NIST earlier. So there is a framework that has been built out to basically describe how one would implement HIPAA. But it's important to note that there's no such thing as being HIPAA certified. Okay. And it really is, it's a law that you need to be compliant with. Now, when a startup or a service provider is providing their service or software or technology to a large corporate, likely you're going to be asked to sign a business associate agreement. Okay, so through the contracting process, if you've kind of made it through all of the hoops that you needed to jump through so far, one of the things you're going to sign is a business associate agreement. Now, that agreement is going to require you to be compliant with the HIPAA laws. And there are a number of them. There's a security rule, there's a privacy rule, and there's a breach notification rule. And they're really going to expect you to be compliant with all three of those. And then there may be some, what we talk, contractual flow downs, where the company that you're engaging with they are required to follow these laws. And then they're pushing some of those requirements down to you. They're flowing them down into the contract and saying, you must also be compliant. So that's why HIPAA is important. It's an expectation. There's no option. You have to be compliant, and your customers are going to require you to be compliant through those contracts. But I think it's important to note, sometimes I see companies that put a seal on their website and say HIPAA certified. It generally would lead someone who's familiar with this industry to sort of question that, because there truly isn't anything called being HIPAA certified. So what most companies do, if they are being asked to go beyond the level of signing a business associate agreement, but their customers are saying, we need you to hire a third party to really verify compliance, that's when companies will typically go down the path of either getting a SOC 2 or HITRUST. So a SOC 2 is common in the United States because it's supported by the AICPA. So it's really an audit standard, but it's focused on security, availability, confidentiality, privacy. So there's options. That's the nice thing about a SOC 2, is that you can choose to start with security only, and then you can add on other areas. And the other thing that you can do with a SOC 2 is you can do what's called a SOC 2 Plus, where we also map the requirements of the HIPAA security rule into the SOC 2, and we can issue an auditor's report over your compliance with SOC 2 and HIPAA. Now you're kind of getting beyond that. I've just signed the business associate agreement to I've now had somebody audit me against the requirements of the HIPAA rule, the specific rule, and they have opined, they've issued an auditor's opinion on my compliance with those standards. So, and that's what I think we probably talked about with Kinsa. They started with a SOC 2 plus HIPAA report. The kind of the top level, I would say, of compliance, security and privacy compliance within the United States is HITRUST. HITRUST is a certification. So we've had a law, we've had an audit, and now we have a certification. You still go through an audit process. You would engage with an auditor to conduct that audit. And then that audit, that body of work, is provided to the HITRUST organization, and they review that work, they QA that work to ensure that it's done to their standard. And if it meets their standard, then HITRUST issues the certification. So going in order in terms of compliance, SOC 2 is probably a more flexible standard. It's faster to achieve, and allows, I would say, it's a good stepping stone to going to HITRUST, which is more prescriptive. Now, I will say HITRUST in recent years has come out with a variety of certifications to try to make it easier to achieve. At one time, HITRUST was just seen as this behemoth. And it was just kind of had this sort of credibility in the marketplace to be, it was a really high level of achievement, but also extremely difficult to get to. So HITRUST recognized that they needed to have something that was a little bit easier for startups, growth mode companies to achieve. And they've come out with 2 other options, which are now better stepping stones. So now when we have conversations with our clients about where should we start, we talk about SOC 2, but we might also then talk about some of those sort of easier stepping stone HITRUST certifications that are out there. So if you have a company that's saying, you have to have HITRUST, there's nothing else that you can have. Once upon a time, that was sort of a daunting to think about, but now there are some easier options. Also, I will mention that there is, just like SOC 2 plus HIPAA, like I explained, there is an option to do a SOC 2 plus ISO 27001, where you could issue an auditor's opinion over your compliance with that standard. It is not an ISO certification. That would be a different process, but it's a bit easier and faster to achieve. And also you can technically do a SOC 2 plus HITRUST. I'm not even going to go into that, but let's just say it is easier to achieve than a HITRUST certification. But all of this to say that there are options and there are ways for startups to achieve this by kind of stepping along the way and sort of growing your compliance as your organization grows. So how do we get there, right? We've talked about some standards. Maybe you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed. It's actually pretty easy. I mean, easy for me to say, right? But it's a 3-step process. So whichever standard you're going to be going for, whether it's going to be now SOC 2, HITRUST, an ISO certification, whatever that might be, you're going to go through some sort of a readiness assessment, right? Even to get to HIPAA compliance. You would work with typically a third party. You certainly could try to do readiness internally, but if you're going to go through an audit, I'd really highly recommend that you work with a firm that is an auditor, who is going to tell you kind of exactly the things that you need to achieve in order to meet that compliance. So I would always suggest that you work with a firm who is a HITRUST certifying body, or does issue SOC 2 audits, or does work directly with whatever the standards might be. So the readiness assessment is going to look at your current state, and is going to identify really the gaps that you need to achieve, you need to remediate in order to achieve compliance. Typically, I work with companies of all shapes and sizes. So we might work with a company who has nothing in place. You don't have any policies, any procedures. You're not doing any sort of vetting of employees before you onboard them, all the way up to really, really large organizations. And so I would say that readiness assessment could be anywhere from a couple of weeks long to a couple of months long, depending on sort of which standard you're going for, and how mature you currently are. If you've already achieved some other standard, you've already done maybe ISO 27001, you're a step closer to achieving some of these other spaces. The next step is going to be remediation. This is the phase that is really unknown. It's hard to say. A lot of times companies say, Kate, how long is it going to take me to get HITRUST? Well, my favorite answer is always, it depends, right? It's hard for me to say because we haven't done the readiness assessment, but typically you will see, we can usually sort of ask a couple of questions and maybe try to give a range. What I can oftentimes tell companies is when they come to me and say, I need this in 2 months, I can honestly tell them this isn't going to happen. And let's have a conversation about how you bring this back to your customer, to maybe sort of buy some time, show that you're making progress, and maybe readjust the time commitment. That period of remediation could be anywhere from 1 month to a year, depending on what standard that you're working on. And then finally, there's the audit phase, right? So once you've completed remediation, then you're going to go through the audit or the certification or whatever that process might be. Now, again, with HIPAA, there is no such thing as an audit or a certification. So really, once you finalize remediation, in theory, you should be able to tell your customers, I am compliant with the HIPAA security rule, privacy rule, breach notification, whatever that might be. But they oftentimes are going to say that's great, but we want you to get that auditor certification. So these are the main, the three main phases that any organization would go through to meet any one of these standards. So here's a little bit more of a visual on the compliance across the standards in terms of kind of, it's kind of a range, I guess, easiest to hardest, mostly just based off of the time to compliance. So most companies can remediate their issues and get to HIPAA compliance in about 6 months. This is give or take. Look, companies can do it faster. They could take a lot longer. This is kind of an average based on my 20 years of experience. We've got privacy, GDPR, CCPA here. I'm not talking a lot about that today. We're primarily focusing on cybersecurity. But, this is, again, these are laws, right? The privacy, the CCPA, GDPR, whatever the privacy laws are in the jurisdiction that you're working in. Some of them may have certifications. Of course, we've got some Privacy Shield that is an option out there. But this kind of sort of falls in this range because you're not necessarily going through an audit or a certification. SOC 2 then is probably the next sort of easiest, I would say, standard to start with. It's less prescriptive and I would say a bit more flexible for a company to say, here are the controls, or here are the technologies, here are the solutions we're going to use in order to achieve compliance. It's a little less prescriptive than the others. Then we have the ISO 27001, we have a HITRUST I1, and then an R2. So when you hear HITRUST, most people think what is now called the R2, which, as you can see, average compliance takes over a year to achieve. But there are others, and even there's a third that they just came out with in January that's even easier than the I1. But in my professional opinion, it's likely not going to be enough to check the box for your customers in order to say I'm HITRUST, I'm HITRUST certified. So there is an easier one that could be an option, but so far we're not recommending it as a way to sort of go to market to say you're HITRUST certified. All right, so talking about what I've shared a bit is there are ways to build your compliance. So this is a typical path that we might take a startup or rapid growth company through when they're working to ultimately maybe trying to get to that highest level of HITRUST compliance. And this is really the story that we had with Kinsa. We started kind of with HIPAA, SOC 2, then we did a SOC 2 plus HITRUST, and now they kind of have their sights on HITRUST certification. And so each one of these standards builds upon the next in this order. When you're thinking about the three most common standards that we talk about in healthcare within the United States, if you were to fit in ISO, similar to this previous slide, it's probably somewhere here between SOC 2 and HITRUST I1. And companies can go, especially because ISO is more of an international standard. We do have clients that are sort of working towards compliance with SOC 2 and ISO at the same time. Interestingly enough, we are seeing an uptick in international. So international to me, meaning not US, international regulatory bodies asking for SOC 2 compliance. So ISO has kind of generally been the most common international standard that we've seen out there. But I do have to tell you that ISO and SOC 2 are different. SOC 2, to achieve compliance, you have to pay a third-party auditor to conduct a full audit of your compliance, whereas ISO allows you to do an internal assessment and then hand that over to a certifying body. So what you don't have there is you don't have a third-party auditor auditing you. You can audit yourself and then you hand that over to a third party. We have found that companies that are ISO 27001 certified and then say, we want to do SOC 2 or we want to do HITRUST, there is a bit of a jump to get there, because while they might have the policies and procedures and kind of standards in place, they maybe don't consistently document the things that they do. And that's what's really important with SOC 2 and HITRUST is you have to document everything that you do. Now, we work with our clients during readiness phase to kind of say, here's the most efficient way to document it. Use a ticketing system, put all of these things in your tickets, or log it in Slack or wherever it might be. But you have to be able to produce evidence at the end of the year that you did what you said you're doing. That's a little bit different than the way ISO works. And so we find that companies do have a jump when they go from ISO certification to SOC 2. And since we're talking with a lot of international companies today, I wanted to make sure I made that clear. If you look at this and say, oh, we already have ISO, I think this will be pretty easy. Don't just assume that. Some companies find an easy jump. Others are caught off guard a bit when they start realizing how much audit procedures have to happen in order to achieve compliance. I don't want to scare you, but I want to be real with you. So these are the most common requirements that you're going to see across all of these standards. Now, some of these requirements include a lot of things, right? When we talk about security tools and monitoring, there's a lot that goes into that. But I think it's important to know that all of these framework standards, certifications, don't just focus on your IT. There are HR practices, right? There are pieces around, are you doing background checks? How are you vetting employees before you hire them? Do you do annual reviews of your employees? Like there are some technical components, and then there are more kind of business process components. So if you're going to go through this process, plan for a variety of people in your organization to be involved. I will say the single largest challenge that our rapid growth clients go through when going through this process is the time of their lead engineers. Okay, those are the most important people in your organization, right? Because they're building your product. They're helping to build a product that you can take to market. They're constantly fixing issues. They're adding new functionality. They are actually a critical part of the getting to compliance. And so that is typically one of the biggest challenges for our clients is finding time from their engineering team. So it's important to plan if you're going to. Don't keep kicking the can down the road if you need this compliance, because what you don't want to have happen is that you ultimately have no more time to kick the can down the road. You have to get started and you're in the middle of a big version 2.0 push because we're going to need the time of your engineers. So it's important to know that there's going to be people across the organization that would need to be available to go through this auditor certification process. So that leads to, what do we need to do to make this more successful so that you don't miss out on those opportunities to engage with the health providers and payers? Is develop a plan. I happen to actually be meeting with one of the Quebec startups this afternoon, who I met in person a couple of months ago when that cohort came here to Minneapolis. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to start talking about developing a plan. I'm really, really excited for them. The time is right for them, but they're not waiting until it's too late. So we're going to start having the conversation about, where do we start? How should we put this into our roadmap? Another important piece is this isn't a requirement, but someone is going to need to play in that CISO role, Chief Information Security Officer role. Sometimes with startups, it ends up being the founder. It's not sustainable. So you should have on your roadmap having either somebody who really knows security well, or potentially engaging with a virtual CISO. Just so you note, you can't use a vCISO with a company who's going to do an audit or a certification. So that's a space that if we did that work for our clients, we can't do the audit piece. So just keep that in mind. The next step is going to be to develop that information security program. Now at that point, that might be that point where you're going to be doing sort of a gap assessment, preparing for a future audit. A lot of times companies say, we're not ready to start the gap assessment because we haven't put our policies in place yet. I usually say, stop. Don't do that. Wait until we do the gap assessment. Let us look at what you have And then we can kind of set you on the right path to create the most efficient set of policies or procedures that are required depending on the standard that you're going for. So don't think that you have to have that in place before you engage with a service provider. And then really it becomes remediation. So now you're in that remediation phase of we're putting the right controls in place that we need. We're preparing ourselves. We're hopefully in a contracting process with some big important clients. And then finally, you're ready for that audit. Now, a lot of times I say, Kate, Kate, we have a huge opportunity with an organization right now, and they want us to be HITRUST compliant. We're afraid we're going to lose the opportunity. And you're telling us it's going to take us a year to get there. What do we do? So there are potential workarounds similar to the story that you heard with Health Beacon. So they weren't in a position yet to start taking in data, data feeds. So what they did is they kind of set up this workaround. So one thing that you could do is say you have a med device, and I know there were a number of med device companies that I met through the Quebec group, and then there were also some more kind of software focused companies. In a sort of a worst case scenario situation, you could potentially work with the corporation that you're engaging with to say, how about we provide our device or our software, but for now, we're going to actually put it in your data center, your cloud environment. We're going to keep it within the bounds of your environment, so you're not transmitting data to us. It's not ideal. It might not be the plan that you set out for. You might have planned to host your product in the cloud on behalf of your customers, but it is an option that might get them comfortable enough to say, we're ready to engage with you. We're not ready to send you our data yet, but you know what, for the next year, we'll just host it in our environment. That does happen a lot. We see that quite a bit, especially with those kind of really large, I would say maybe healthcare systems are a little bit more open to doing that than insurance companies or payers are. I see that more oftentimes with healthcare systems, but it certainly is an option to sort of buy you some time so you can get to compliance if that's really going to be a hang up for them. But it's not ideal. It probably is creating extra cost for you. So be thinking and have that plan and roadmap in place to get ahead of this, so you're not losing those opportunities. So that's my presentation. Try to keep it fairly short and sweet. I am actually a cybersecurity professional, and I do audit work. And so I have to really temper myself when I start talking about those standards, because I could do it all day long. But the story here is, and again, taking it back to what Ashley shared at the beginning, there's a lot of opportunity out there with really large organizations that have to innovate and need to work with partners to do it. And there are a lot of barriers to getting there, and knock this one off the list and just get to a point where you feel comfortable, you can sleep at night knowing we're covered, we've got our compliance, and that's one less barrier to entry into the US market. So with that, I think I'm ready for questions, Kyle.
Yeah, thanks so much, Kate. This is fantastic. Again, folks, if you've got questions, please feel free to drop them into the Q&A function here. So, I mean, just as you were talking, Kate, I was just thinking to myself, gosh, at this point, knowing this is device, this is digital, who doesn't need this? I guess it's maybe a question that I have. Is there any downside to at least just reaching out and saying, am I going to need to go through this process?
Yeah, I mean, I had a really fun opportunity to have some of those conversations when the Quebec cohort came here in December. Was December? Gosh, it seems so long ago already.
Yeah, it was.
And we had a lot of those conversations where it was, well, let me just tell you about what my device does, and you tell me if you think I need to do this. And they kind of walk me through, but usually the conversation ended up on, it might be, well, it's just a device. It doesn't have any sort of, like major software, anything built around it. But then when we talk about what kind of data are you gathering? Are you gathering data for use cases? Are you using live data to even just sort of like for R&D purposes? And it's pretty rare today that you don't have a device that still has some sort of data enablement with it, because that's what the payers and the providers want. That data is what's so valuable to them, right? If we can improve the care we're providing, if we can improve the cost of care, the time to care, the experience, we want to do that. And the best way to do that is to take the data and the information that we have, use that to make better decisions in the future, and try to fix those problems that we have today. So, and it's off target, but I'm working with 2 companies right now that, literally not in the healthcare space, but I'm working with a company right now that manufactures the perfume inserts that you find in magazines, and they need SOC 2 compliance. I mean, it even blows. After 20 years of doing this, my mind is even blown. And when they explain why they need it, it's like, oh my gosh, it makes so much sense. So I really makes sense that that you are thinking about this, and at least making sure that you're planning for it on a future horizon, even if it's not a requirement today.
Thank you. All right, we got a couple questions here. So the first, does the FDA hold the medical device manufacturer to be responsible for software provided by them, including that of others? Can you comment on the challenges of vendor management, as the medical device manufacturer may be certified, but can fail due to connections and software provided by others?
Gosh, it's a long question. I wish I could see it in front of me right now. I can pull it up.
I'll pop it up for you. Yeah.
Oh, that'd be awesome. So I will say I am not an FDA expert. That is not my area of expertise. So I have to qualify that. There's areas I can say I'm an expert in, and there's other areas I can't. FDA is not necessarily my area of expertise. But what I can tell you is that the FDA is placing more and more focus on cybersecurity. I am hearing that over and over again with my clients, that when they're working through the FDA process, that when they're able to share that they're either going through the process of SOC 2 or HITRUST or whatever it might be, or they've achieved it, there's some value there that the FDA is seeing in that process. Thank you for sharing that. So now I can see this question here. The challenges of vendor management as the middle. Oh, I see now. Thank you. This is a great question. So we've talked about the compliance that you should have as an organization, as a startup. But as the question indicates, how do we control our vendors if we're using, I believe I'm understanding this question. If I'm not getting it right, I apologize, Bill, and you're welcome to reach out to me, and we can have a further conversation. So the challenges of vendor management, but it can fail due to connections and software provided by others. So not only is it important for you to have the audit or certification that your customers are asking for, but it is very, very important that you're working with vendors who have achieved those similar or same certifications. It is going to make your life a lot easier as you're engaging with your customers or working with the FDA. So I always tell my clients, use other third parties that also have these same certifications. If they don't, there's a very heavy burden on you to really, really vet them and have your own vendor review process in place. And I will say these standards, one of the requirements is that you have your own vendor management process. There are specific controls or requirements, whether it's SOC 2 or HITRUST or ISO or whatever it might be, you have to have your own vendor management process in place. And that's something that we sort of review and go through when we're doing those readiness assessments, getting companies ready for these audits or certifications. So it really is critical. Now, how that plays into FDA, Bill, I have to tell you, I'm not the FDA expert. That's not my area of expertise. But the FDA cares about cyber today, and these cyber standards take vendor management, incident management. Those are really, really important parts of the process. All right. I do see the other one here.
You see it? Perfect.
Yeah. So what about these certifications if you plan on having the cloud solution part provided by a third party already certified? This is a little bit what we're talking about. Okay. So almost every one of my clients is using AWS, Azure, GCP, maybe there's some others in there, but almost every single one of them has data in the cloud. It's a rare occasion when I find a company that is still in some sort of a physical data center anymore. Just because you're using a cloud environment that has their own SOC or HITRUST does not make you compliant. Once upon a time, companies could get away with saying, oh, we're in AWS and AWS has SOC 2 or AWS has HITRUST. That just doesn't fly anymore. That's a component of your environment. But those cloud providers don't manage your application or your data or your database. You are the ones who control who can log into them. You're the ones controlling, have you enabled multi-factor authentication? You're the one who's enabling the type of encryption that you're using. And payers and providers are smart enough to know now that you cannot just walk in with an AWS SOC 2 or HITRUST or whatever it might be and say, yep, you're good to go. Once upon a time, you could do that. Once upon a time, the only companies that had SOC 2 were really data centers. Look, I've been doing this for 20 years. I spent a lot of time in data centers the first maybe like 10 years of my career. It's been a long time since I walked through a data center, but it used to be as long as you had a physical server sitting in a data center, you were good to go. Those days, unfortunately, are gone. So every company within your, really within your ecosystem should have some level of compliance in order to make your life easy, but it's not going to get you out of having to do this.
Love it. We'll have to talk data centers sometime. Like in a former life, I did a lot of certification of data centers for tax incentives.
Oh my gosh, funny.
Well,
I was
I don't
engaged walking in and be like, oh wow, look at this new technology. Does it feel cool? I walked into a data center one time and they didn't realize that their air conditioning had failed. And we walked in and it was 98 degrees in the room. And I was the auditor and they were like, oh my gosh.
Well, there you go. I think that speaks
Not
to
good.
your
I have so many
party
stories.
doesn't always do things right. Oh goodness. Well, we don't have any more questions at the moment, but everyone does see Kate has provided her contact information here. And I think it'd be fair to say you genuinely welcome questions and are happy to talk to folks. And we've really seen that play out in person in here today. So I just want to thank you again for this time and for this conversation. Please, everyone, just enjoy the rest of your Wednesday here. We'll give you 2 minutes back. Thank you so much.
Everyone. Thanks, Cal.